So this morning, as we were getting ready to go, obviously before you leave the house, we say, everybody go to the bathroom before we leave. And one of the girls said she didn't have to go, and she said she can hold it. And I said, but what if the preacher goes long? So, yeah. And that's when Sarah said, he's not going to, is he? Yeah, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. So this is my first time getting to talk to you guys from up here, which is kind of exciting. How genuinely and beautifully ironic. So I'm getting to continue on a portion of this talk about these spiritual beings, the Elohim, a kind of other realm that's out there and it exists, but we don't always see it, but we still sometimes experience it. And so I'm getting to do that, and just in its most beautiful irony, the first time I get to talk to you, the topic gets to be Satan. So what an excellent twist, but so very beautifully me. It's, hey, you want to talk about Satan? Yeah, let's do that for an hour or so. It won't be an hour, don't worry. But we can talk about that. So we're going to talk about Satan a little bit, this kind of specific character in the Bible. And so a big thing that kind of came up is really, you're going to get up on Sunday and talk about Satan? Well, yes. And I had to ask myself, why? Why do we bring this up? Why do we talk about this one specific character? If you have your Bibles, get them out. We will be in them a lot, and we'll see why. But we're going to start just looking at 1 Peter chapter 5. And it really describes why you need to know about this. And so 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8, it says, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Resist him, stand firm in the faith, because you know that the family of believers throughout the world is undergoing the same kind of sufferings." So we talk about this because the Bible talks about this. I mean, he's mentioned, he comes up a lot. And he roams around, very reality, like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. So we need to be aware of what this character is. And now, as I got looking into this, Satan comes up a lot. I would dare contend, and I was editing one of the videos John talked about a few weeks ago, where he really nailed down a really key point that the Bible is a story about God, the Elohim. So it is a story about God. It's a story about his people and his carrying through these people and their failures and his successes and their failures and their failures, and that's really what this story is about. But yet at the same time, we get these glimpses of these little characters, these background kind of players that are still there, but it's not what the book is about. And when you look at this one specific character, this Satan, I will dare contend that after that key theme, he may be the most prevalent, the most talked about, the one that comes up the most kind of throughout it. We see him at the very beginning in Genesis in the garden. He's absolutely there. We see him all the way back in Revelation. He's there. And so it's this character that comes up a lot. And so when I started putting this together and kind of tackling this and saying, how can I talk about this in a reasonable amount of time? I said, let's kind of break it down into a couple of topics. So some key pieces, because there's no way we can cover the array of what this Satan is. But I want to talk a little bit about what's his name. So what's the name of Satan? And the reason I want to do that is because you'll see really throughout, the Bible very much, but certainly back in through the Old Testament and this Hebrew tradition, that the name is really going to highlight a lot of who that character is. It's going to tell us something about them, and that just seems to be a very consistent way. Adam really meant man. And when Adam gives the name Eve, he gives the name to Eve because Eve means living. And, she's going to be the mother of every living being. One of my favorites is when names changes. So in the book of Ruth, and I love Ruth because I feel like as I'm reading through the Bible and you get through Judges, I'm just on this really kind of downtrodden kind of a perspective. And then Ruth is just this breath of fresh air. But Naomi, after all these tragedies befall her, she says, okay, don't call me Naomi anymore, which means pleasant. And she says, my name now is going to be Mara, which means bitter. And so it really describes who it is. Even Peter used to be Cephas, but he says, on this rock I will build my church. And so Peter gets this name, Peter. And so we're going to look a little bit at the name of Satan, and really specifically more the Satan, as we're going to discover. Next, I want to talk a little bit about what he's not. And the reason we want to talk about what he's not is, in this prevalence of this character, so much of our society, our entertainment, so much literature, so many things have painted this story of the Satan, and some of it has unfortunately driven misconceptions or suggested things about him that he's not. And so we want to talk a little bit about what is he not. But then as we contrast that, we can talk about all the things he's not, but we really also want to look at what is he. So what can he do? What is he about? And so that's kind of the approach we're going to take here into this idea of the Satan. So what's the name of the Satan? So interestingly, the term Satan, when it comes up in our Bibles, we always get it described as Satan. Oh, I love this picture. This is from a movie. It's called Wreck-It Ralph. And this is apparently a bad guy in another movie that I've never played. And Ralph to him says, "Sorry, Satan." He goes, "It's Satine, actually." It's quite comical, so that's why the name of Satan cracked me up. But Satan is never written as Satan. It's always got an adjective uniquely in front of it. And that adjective is always the, of all things. And so it's describing him as the Satan. It's ha-Satine is the idea. And so everywhere where you're going to see this term Satan referring to this absolutely key adversary, it's really given the word the in front of it. And so it's really describing the Satan. And Satan, this Satine word, it just means adversary or opposed or the one against, the accuser. I mean, we could put a load of synonyms, I should say, that really kind of compare up what this idea of Satan means. This Satine is the idea. And uniquely, when we look through the Bible, it's not even exclusively, when the word Satan comes up, it's not always talking about the Satan. If we go back, I get into, pages are getting stuck together. It's a tablet, they don't get stuck together. Back in Numbers chapter 22, this is the story, probably one of the more bizarre stories, I'll say, that I've read in the Bible. It's the idea of Balaam and his donkey, as it is. He's on his way, and he's really opposed with this donkey. But in Numbers 22, verse 21, Balaam got up in the morning, sat his donkey, and went along with the Moabite officials. But God was very angry when he went, and the angel of the Lord stood on the road to Satine him, to Satan him, to oppose him. So this word Satan is really just describing to oppose. And lots of people can be one opposed. It's not weird. And so in here we're going to see this adjective before it as a Satine, not the Satine. And so describing this idea is really just a concept of being opposed. And he is just the one that is opposed. The best way I could really kind of wrap my head around this was I thought a lot about, it's kind of like a courtroom is the idea. So you have the prosecutor, you have the defendant, you have people who are the and this thing, and that thing is describing what they are and what role they're playing and what their job is to do while they're there. And it's the same kind of idea. So when we see this Satan word come up, it is always the Satan, and that is throughout the Hebrew Bible, throughout the Greek New Testament. It is always referred to it as the Satan. And it makes you wonder a little bit, like, why are we talking about it like that? And it's probably because it sounds weird to say it more than anything else. I think translators, when they're writing these Bibles, they don't want to make it harder to read or harder to comprehend or harder to approach. And so they probably just take that off of there. But it is absolutely always there, this the one opposed. It's really just his job. It is definitely not his name. devil, which is really just the term diabolos. It's the same kind of idea, and it's really just the Greek edition of that same kind of description. It is adversary and opposed, and just one who is against is the idea. But it's really just an extension down of this. And it's kind of key, and honestly, I feel like it's pretty important that these biblical writers are not giving credence. They're not giving an option for this thing to have a name. Like, it just doesn't deserve a name. This is the thing that is against the everything. It is opposing God in its entirety. Everything that is good in creation, this character wants to undo. It wants to be the anti of whatever that is. And that's a description of something, but not something that is deserving of a name. Dragon, snake, serpent, another great description. They all like to come up. They're all descriptive words, but you wouldn't call him the dragon, or you wouldn't say his name is dragon. That would be very weird. They're descriptions that are further trying to classify or trying to help write this word picture, which biblically is just a normal thing, and we don't always think that way, but creating word pictures real normal in that biblical style of writing. They want to give you an idea of what this thing is that really shouldn't have a great idea about it. And that's really this description, this furthering of that idea. And actually, fun enough, we see most of these come up all in one spot. Out back, I'm going to go to the very back of the Bible now. Let's go back to Revelation. Chapter 12. Where we get to see John just brilliantly, let's call him everything under the sun is really the idea. Is really the thing. He takes all of these descriptions and just pulls them into one kind of continuous idea. So I'm going to start, Revelation chapter 12, verse 7 says, "Then war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But they were not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, the ancient serpent called dragon, or Satan, who leads the world astray." So let's take all of these word images and pull them all together and describe this one character. But the idea that that character has this name is not the thing. This is not of what it is. And so if you ever hear of or see people in their strangeness wanting to call on Satan or the name of Satan, they're really calling on the job description of this one who is an adversary and opposed, but they're not, it doesn't have a name, or at least nothing that we can attribute it to. The closest and most uniqueness is actually that idea of Lucifer. And so it's a term that doesn't come up a lot, but it does show up in some places. Back in Isaiah chapter 14. This is kind of a cool one to look at. Man, we're bouncing around today, guys. That's what happens when you get a character that's existed for a long time. It shows up periodically. Isaiah chapter 14, I'm going to just start in verse 12. It says, "How you have fallen from heaven, morning star, O son of the dawn. You have been cast down to the earth, you who once laid low the nations. You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven, I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the mount of the assembly, on the utmost heights of Mount Zaphon." So mine says morning star. I'm reading an NIV. And now one of the fun aspects and one of the strange perks that came to reading out of a tablet is I have a couple hundred versions of the Bible that I can read in. If anybody happens to have a King James or a New King James, you're probably running into the word Lucifer instead of morning star. And so you may wonder, how in the world did we get Lucifer out of morning star? Where did those come from? This is fun. This is where I get to be the nerd that I am. So probably 2nd century, 3rd century AD, we see the Bible as it is getting translated. So out of its original manuscripts, we're not talking the Hebrew or the Greek or the Septuagint, but rather we're getting it translated into Latin, of all things. And so this really prevalent language within the Roman Empire, Latin's coming in. And so we're getting these translations coming in. The idea of the star here is as the sun rises and the stars fade away, there's a last one that hangs out. And that last one, so we call it Venus, but in Latin, that term is actually Luciferas, or Lucifer. It's the morning star, the star that hangs on till the end, that star of the dawn. And so this morning star, thanks to Latin, becomes Lucifer for us, and that's how we get to carry on this name. So Lucifer, not really a name, it's a description of an action of this one who stands opposed to the sunrise. And so looking into the heavens and the stars and this heavenly host, it's a really normal concept for them to look up here and see these stars and attribute them to the angels in the heaven, and we kind of give us those word pictures that created. And that one that hangs on the longest, that Venus, that Lucifer, is really where this title comes in. Kind of interesting, kind of crazy that even Lucifer, the idea, is really not a name anymore. They're not giving a name to this thing. It's a description of, this character and what he is doing in standing opposed. So, and that actually makes a really great segue into what is he not? He is not God's equivalent. He is not God's equal counterpart. And I think that's something like if you stop and you think about it for a moment, you would obviously register that. But when we're not stopping, we're not thinking about it, we will see so commonly this concept of like the devil and God pitted against each other, and that is just not the case. So think about Venus. What a great word description. Once that sun rises, is Venus of any consequence to it? Do you see it during the day? No. And the same idea is really getting carried out. Venus against the sun is a concept that is similar to the devil, the Satan, to God. He is not omnipresent. He is not omniscient. He is not everywhere in all places at all times. It's something that, as you read through that biblical narrative, every time you see this character come up, it is in a singular place. He is somewhere at some times, but the idea that, where, two or more meet together in my name, I'm there too, not the Satan. It doesn't get that ability. So, when he is he's tempting Jesus, he's there tempting Jesus. It doesn't say that he was there and this other place at the same time. There's just nowhere in the Bible that I could find that suggests the idea that he could be in all places. It just doesn't exist. And so he makes him this just genuinely not equivalent to what it is. He is not the yin to God's yang. It's not a thing. He comes with a limit. He can't be blamed for everything that happens bad to us. In saying, the devil made me do it, or the devil was certainly behind this, it negates the responsibility, it negates the choices that we as humans, I'm really happy that the sign hasn't changed in a while, so that we're spirits having a human experience, which is just great. We still have an aspect of a spiritual being within us, and the devil does not negate every bad decision that we are fully capable of making. In the garden, when he is tempting Eve, she makes that decision. Adam makes that decision to eat that as well. Those are decisions that they fully did. He can harass. He can twist. He can manipulate to an extent. He will do whatever he can. But to think that you are beyond making your own bad decisions and bringing about and humankind pairing with Satan, honestly, to bring this downfall of this anti-good thing is absolutely not the case. He is not behind everything. Sarah and I were watching a video not too long ago of a guy on YouTube who's doing a commentary to another video, because apparently that's what people do on YouTube. And it was somebody just really giving a very despicable worldview. I'll put it that way. And we kind of wondered and said, man, this is so commonplace and so accepted right now clearly the devil is behind this. And I had to say, while I'm deep into this study of the Satan, I said, I don't know that. He can start a ball rolling. He maybe could very well have put together some strings or some concepts or elicited certain scenarios to enable us to make those very, very poor, despicable decisions. But we as human beings are absolutely within our capacity to do that ourselves. And we are not negated from that responsibility. But the beauty is in the fact that the devil can't make you do it. He can make you want to do it, but you're going to do that yourself. So when bad things happen in the world, and we have to say, well, why does this happen? You. Me too, but like us. It's fully within us to do that. And he doesn't have free reign over everything. Now, when we talk about the Satan and you think about the Bible, how can you can't not bring up Job. One of the more crazy interactions, but gives us so much into what Job is going into. And Job is one of those really, really interesting books, as it would be, in that I think we are generally pretty familiar with chapters 1 and 2 and the narrative portion of it. And then like chapters 3 to about 36, we get lost in this really deep Hebrew poetry is the idea. And so we get a little lost in that. But, chapters 1 and 2 is certainly where we're at. But we get to see some of Satan's interactions. The Satan's. I got to keep that there. So it even sounds awkward when I say it, though. Like I've tried to make a point to emphasize, I'm not talking about Satan as a name. It's the Satan, the character's job. And it's littered throughout here, everywhere it comes up. But Job, chapter 1, looking at verse 6, it says, one day the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and the Satan came with them. And the Lord said to the Satan, where have you come from? Oh, I guess he can't be everywhere. Because Satan answered the Lord, from roaming throughout the earth, going back and forth on it. Then the Lord said to the Satan, if you consider my servant Job, there's no one like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. Jump down to verse 12. It says, the Lord said to the Satan, very well then, everything he has is in your power, but on the man himself do not lay a finger. Then the Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. So again, really emphasizing he's not everywhere. He was in the earth and going in and out from it, but he was in a place. He wasn't encapsulating the whole earth and being on it in all places at all times. But he's also being given directive from the God, the Elohim. And he has to abide with those. And if you're familiar with that story, he does abide with it. He takes away everything from Job. He kills his family and he destroys his homes and gets rid of his cattle and takes away everything that he has. But he follows the directive of what God has given him. So there's a limit to his power, a limit to what he does. Because there's just a limit, and that limit is set by something who is actually all-powerful, and that is, our God, our Elohim. And so he is not a lot of things. But let's take a look at what he is, and this is really kind of key too. So what is he capable of? What is he? He's shrewd, he's perceptive, and he will use all of that ability to his advantage. We're going to go all the way back to the beginning. You guys like flipping through your Bible a bunch, don't you? I love it. I love it. Mostly because it's buttons for me. But Genesis chapter 3, in verse 1. So we're getting our first description here of, this is the Satan on the scene, basically. This is it. And here's the description given to him. So Genesis 3, verse 1. Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, did God really say you must not eat of any tree in the garden? That's a really key description there. The serpent was more crafty. And now this idea of being crafty, it's not a negative description. It's not inherently bad. It is aligned with perceptive. It's aligned with being shrewd, discerning, insightful. Like, these are really key descriptions of that idea of being crafty. Now, granted, yes, the Satan uses it for an exclusively horrible agenda, but he is crafty. And even the Bible describes him as crafty. Like, I like to think that I'm astute. You know, I like to struggle with logic problems every now and then. I like to think that I can put some pieces together logically. But nobody would come to me and describe me as crafty the way they're talking about the Satan here. So he has an ability to be wise, to be clever, to be creative. So those are all things that are within the Satan's capacity. Now, this idea of being crafty more than all the wild animals is, of course, mirrored with a few verses down in 14, where it says he is now cursed more than all the other animals. So a bit of a literary kind of design there for this balance of, you know, what he is, and because of what he does with what he is now this as well. So he is crafty more than all the wild animals. He is also cursed more than all the wild animals. But he is absolutely crafty. And so to think that you are going to outsmart, outwise, outthink what the Satan is able to do, odds are the Bible wouldn't describe you as that either. So those are good qualities to have, but the idea that you're going to be described in the Bible as being that, it's not likely. It's a good quality, but to think that you're going to just outwise the devil on your own, the biblical narrative is not consistent with that idea. So he is crafty. Yeah. In addition to being crafty, within the capacity given to him, he will do whatever he can to accomplish his goal, which is being the anti of everything. So 2 Corinthians, this is crazy good description. Chapter 11. So here we have Paul giving a bit of a talk to this church. And what they're having happen in this church is there's preachers and what he calls the super apostles. I think my Bible puts quotes around that term too. So the super apostles. So they have these people coming in and they are preaching a gospel that is not the gospel. They're deceiving this church. And they're very eloquent. They're very good speakers. They present this information and they're captivating this audience and they're getting paid to do it. So there's these people coming in who are saying whatever they want, and it probably sounds pretty good. And people are paying them, and they're making a great wage on it. And maybe that's not super inconsistent with lots of things that happen in some other churches as well. But that's what's going on in this thing. And Paul is really condemning that and saying, you know, don't listen to that. You guys need to, you know, pay attention and be wise and be astute and really know the gospel that was presented to you, because that is the gospel. And so we have that description, and here he pairs it with a description also coming of the Satan. And so 2 Corinthians, 11 in verse 12, it says, "And I will keep on doing what I am doing in order to cut the ground from under those who want an opportunity to be considered equal with us in the things they boast about. For such people are false prophets, or false apostles, deceitful workers, masquerading as apostles of Christ, and no wonder. For the Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. It's not surprising then that his servants also masquerade as servants of righteousness. Their end will be what their actions deserve." He masquerades. He is not above that. The idea that he has to always play fair? No. Something that may seem like a caring idea, maybe presented as a loving perspective, something that may come that way, if we're not astute to it, if we're not aware and conscious of where that good feeling may very well be absolutely contradicted, that we're running amok with this and having the Satan and his ideas being masqueraded to us as what should be an angel of light, something great. It's not above him to do that. And the big key here, Jude, that's not chapter 9. Anybody caught that? There's only one chapter in Jude, so it's verse 9. But Jude describes this, the warning of the Satan, probably better than maybe anywhere else. So Jude, I'm going to start in verse 8. In the very same way, on the strength of their dreams, these ungodly people pollute their own bodies, reject authority, and heap abuse on celestial beings. But even the archangel Michael, when he was disputing with the devil about the body of Moses, he did not himself dare to condemn him for the slander, but said, "The Lord rebuke you." So he is crafty beyond our abilities. He is perceptive and insightful and clever beyond us. And if you think you're powerful, well, Michael, he wouldn't bring a condemnation against him. He wouldn't rebuke him himself. It says, "The Lord rebuke you." He is absolutely a powerful enemy and somebody to be treated as though you're facing a powerful enemy. So the idea that, and I know I've seen, these very big prosperity type preachers that will say, "I rebuke you, devil." I'm like, do you? Would you really do that? Because it's just not realistic. So every piece of that biblical narrative does not paint that as a scenario that makes any sense whatsoever. And so, what do? So, he's not omnipresent, but he's absolutely dangerous. He is not God's equivalent, but he is more than we can handle probably on our own. Forget probably. He is more than we can handle on our own. Everything in the biblical narrative suggests that this is the case of what that Satan is. So what do? Realistically, our best defense is exactly what Michael did. It's the same perspective as what Paul told the Corinthians. It's the exact perspective that Jesus himself took when he was faced with directly the Satan. And the more I think about that and the more that I studied into this, it's weird to spend the last couple weeks just studying the devil, but I did. The more astounding it is the fact that Jesus was faced with this character on his own in a weakened state and took him head on. But what did he do? He used the scripture against him. He said, "Be aware." Paul's description to Corinthians is, remember the gospel that you were told. Stand firm in this message that you were given, because that's when you're going to take the attacks that this is going to be. They're going to be deceptive. And if we don't know what truth is, we will easily be swayed when an angel of light presents itself to us. So respecting this idea of what the Satan is and this character that it absolutely is, it's powerful enough that I wouldn't take it on. But I know that I can stand behind a rising sun that absolutely can and has taken it on. And that's who I'm going to lean on, and the word that I'm given to know my right and my wrong.